December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor, Oahu, territory of Hawaii. 07:55 a.m. The sky tears apart with the scream of engines. A formation of Japanese A6M0 fighters swoops over Battleship Row, their machine guns flashing like lightning in the dawn haze. Moments later, the harbor erupts in chaos. The Arizona is split open by an armor-piercing bomb. The Oklahoma begins to capsize, and the West Virginia shudders as torpedoes punch through her hull. Amid the black smoke and burning oil, sailors throw themselves into the oily water, clawing for life. Explosions echo off the crater walls of Oahu, and the Pacific Fleet, the pride of the US Navy, sinks into the mud. But just beyond the flames, in the Naval Shipyard's machine shop, a young woman named Dorothy McIntyre watches from behind a welding mask. She's 28, a civilian welder from Oakland who came to Hawaii just months earlier to work on dry dock repairs. The ground shakes beneath her as the first wave strikes, but she doesn't run. She drops her welding torch, rips off her mask, and sprints toward the waterfront, into the inferno. Within hours, the yard is unrecognizable. Crippled battleships lean against each other, fires still roaring. McIntyre joins a handful of civilian workers and enlisted men dragging hoses, moving fuel lines, trying to keep what's left of the harbor from exploding. No one knows yet that the real battle, the fight to save the fleet, is only beginning. That night, under the orange glow of fires that still burn on the water, the harbor is silent except for the hiss of steam. Divers and engineers gather in the yard office, their faces hollow with exhaustion. The Navy's senior salvage officer, Captain Homer N. Wallin, spreads blueprints of the sunken ships across the table. "We'll raise them," he says flatly. "Every one we can." McIntyre listens from the back of the room, arms crossed, face smeared with soot. She has no rank, no uniform, but she knows steel. And right now, steel is all that stands between the US Navy and ruin. December the 9th, 1941. 2 days after the attack, the harbor is still a graveyard. Smoke lingers over Ford Island, and the water shimmers with oil and debris. The battleship USS West Virginia, BB-48, lies half submerged at her berth beside the Tennessee. Her decks twisted, her hull torn open by 7 torpedoes. Captain Homer Wallin's salvage team has one mission: keep her from sinking further. If she slides off her moorings, she'll be lost forever in the harbor mud. When the first divers go down, they find the damage worse than anyone imagined. Jagged holes the size of trucks, bulkheads shredded, compartments flooded to the main deck. The official Navy engineers shake their heads. "No way we can patch that underwater," one mutters, "not without a full dry dock." But McIntyre refuses to accept it. She walks the edge of the quay, studying the listing hulk through the haze. The ship is alive in her own way, moaning, bubbling, sighing as trapped air escapes. "Steel breathes," whispers to herself. "You just have to listen to where it's breaking." That night, in the corner of the machine shop, she begins sketching something on a scrap of cardboard, a quick seal plate made from steel sheeting reinforced with cross braces. Her idea: send divers down with these makeshift panels, clamp them over the hull breaches, and weld the seams underwater to hold back the Pacific. When she presents it the next morning, one lieutenant scoffs. "Miss McIntyre, underwater welding isn't Navy protocol," he says. She shoots back. "Neither is losing half your fleet." Wallin studies her drawing. It's crude, but it could work, if someone's crazy enough to try it. By sundown, Dot has a small crew of civilian welders and Navy divers gathered beside West Virginia. They haul down torches, oxygen lines, and the first of her handmade plates. It's dangerous work. The water is dark and filled with floating debris. Torches sputter in the current. Each breath from the divers' helmets sounds like thunder through the headset lines. Sparks bloom, like underwater fireflies as McIntyre's improvised technique, sealing from the outside, inward, begins to take shape. After the first 48 hours, the leaks slow. By the end of the week, the engineers record something no one thought possible. The West Virginia has stopped sinking. Her hull is scarred but stable, and somewhere beneath the surface, McIntyre's welds, imperfect, uneven, but solid, are holding back the sea. December 14th, 1941. The tropical air over Pearl Harbor still smells of oil and rust. The cries of gulls mix with the clang of steel as welding arcs dance along the crippled hulls. In dry dock numb 1, sparks shower down like molten rain, and at the center of it all, Dorothy McIntyre is waist-deep in black water, her torch blazing under the surface. Underwater welding was thought impossible for large-scale use before the attack. Conventional methods required dry conditions, steady oxygen, and clear visibility, luxuries no longer available in a harbour littered with burning ships. But Dot's improvised wet weld technique changes everything. She uses modified torches with a waterproof sleeve, fashioned from scavenged rubber hoses and oiled canvas. Her electrodes, coated in paraffin wax, burn hotter, piercing the water barrier and fusing steel to steel in brief, blinding bursts of light. To the divers watching through their murky helmets, it looks like lightning underwater. When Captain Wallin visits the site, he watches her work for several minutes, arms folded. "You're doing this without blueprints," he says through his headset. Dot lifts her mask, grinning. "Blueprints are for peacetime, Captain." By mid-December, her method has spread across the yard. Teams of welders and divers, both men and women, begin adapting her design for other ships. The Nevada, the California, even the Oklahoma, still half capsized. Her quick seal plates become known among the crews as dot patches, and her name is whispered around the yard with equal parts awe and disbelief. But progress comes at a cost. The harbour's waters are toxic with oil and debris. Every descent means risking electrocution or drowning. During one night shift, a ruptured oxygen hose sends a flame shooting across the deck. McIntyre narrowly dodges the blast, her coveralls singed. She refuses to stop. "If we lose these ships," she says, "we lose the war before it even starts." Word spreads to Washington. Admiral Chester Nimitz, newly appointed commander of the Pacific Fleet, is briefed on the civilian welders' salvage miracle, and he orders that every battleship still afloat be examined for potential recovery. McIntyre's technique, crude but proven, becomes the foundation for a new naval doctrine: emergency field salvage. By Christmas, the harbour begins to sound less like a morgue and more like a factory. Pumps hum, cranes groan, riveters echo through the night. The ships of Battleship Row are rising, one plate at a time. Dot spends the holiday alone in the workshop, welding torch in hand. When a young sailor offers her a cup of coffee, she smiles faintly. "Just keep that torch fed," she says. "We're bringing them sack." January 1942. The new year dawns over Pearl Harbor in shades of grey and iron. The Pacific Fleet, once silent and broken, now hums with an industrial heartbeat. Barges glide between the wrecks, cranes sway like steel giants, and welding arcs flash across the oily water, the sound of rebirth. In the center of it all, the USS West Virginia stands taller. Her decks have been drained of thousands of tons of seawater. Inside, engineers move carefully through dark, rust-streaked corridors where the smell of diesel and death still lingers. They find notes carved into bulkheads by trapped sailors, messages that stop everyone in their tracks. "Still here, waiting. Tell Mum I tried." When McIntyre hears about it, she sits alone on the pier that night, staring at the half-moon reflected in the harbour. She'd spent weeks fighting to keep the ship from sinking, but now she realises she's been holding something else up, the spirit of a wounded nation. Captain Wallin joins her, carrying 2 tin mugs of coffee. "You've done more than anyone thought possible," he says. Dot shrugs, eyes still on the water. "Steel's easy, Captain. It's people who break harder." By February, her team has sealed more than 200 hull fractures across multiple ships. They've pumped out flooded compartments, stabilized keels, and even refloated the California. The Navy begins documenting her methods. The McIntyre process, they call it in the reports. A combination of quick weld sealing and structural bracing that can be applied under combat conditions. Newspapers back on the mainland run headlines like, "Civilian woman helps save battleship fleet." For the first time since the attack, photographs show something other than destruction. Sparks flying over the rising superstructures of ships once thought lost. Still, Dot refuses interviews. When a journalist from the Honolulu Advertiser tracks her down, she's too busy to talk. Her hands are black with soot, her face streaked with salt. "Write about the men who went down there," she tells him. They're the story. March brings the next challenge, the refloating of the Nevada, the only battleship to get underway during the attack before being beached. Dot's techniques are now part of standard procedure. Her patch teams, a mix of Navy and civilian welders, swarm the hull like ants, sealing ruptures and replacing rivets. When the ship finally lifts free of the seabed, horns sound across the harbour. Sailors cheer. For the first time, someone starts playing Anchors Away over the loudspeakers. Dot removes her gloves and wipes her brow, exhausted. Around her, the air smells not of smoke anymore, but of hot steel and hope. She looks at the rising ships and says quietly, "They're not ghosts anymore." Captain Wallin turns to her. "No," he replies. "They're the beginning of what's next." That spring, as the Pacific Fleet sails again, West Virginia repaired, refitted, and ready. Few outside the Navy know how close those ships came to vanishing beneath the waves. Fewer still know the name of the woman whose courage held them up. But among the welders of Pearl Harbor, it becomes a quiet legend. They still talk about Dot McIntyre, the civilian who stared into the burning harbor and decided to weld it back together.